All right, guys, Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. This is chapter 9, The Cure for Inflation. Subchapter is called The Cure for Inflation. Chapter 9, Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. Chapter 9, The Cure for Inflation. This subchapter is also called The Cure for Inflation. The cure for inflation is simple to state but hard to implement. Just as an excessive increase in the quantity of money is the one and only important cause of inflation, so a reduction in the rate of monetary growth is the one and only cure for inflation. To reduce the rate of monetary growth is the one and only cure for inflation. The problem is not one of knowing what to do. That is easy enough. Government must increase the quantity of money less rapidly. The problem is to have the political will to take the measures necessary. Once the inflationary disease is in an advanced state, the cure takes a long time and has painful side effects. Once the inflationary disease is in an advanced state, the cure takes a long time and has painful side effects. Two medical analogies suggest the problem. One is about a young man who had Berger's disease, a disease that interrupts the blood supply and can lead to gangrene. The young man was losing fingers and toes. The cure is simple to state: stop smoking. The young man did not have the will to do so. His addiction to tobacco was simply too great. His disease was in one sense curable and another not. A more instructive analogy is between inflation and alcoholism. When the alcoholic starts drinking, the good effects come first. The bad effects only come the next morning when he wakes up with a hangover. And often cannot resist easing the hangover by taking the hair of the dog that bit him. The parallel with inflation is exact. When a country starts on an inflationary episode, the initial effects seem good. The increased quantity of money enables whoever has access to it, nowadays primarily governments, to spend more without anybody else having to spend less. Jobs become more plentiful. Business is brisk. Almost everybody is happy at first. Those are the good effects. But then the increased spending starts to raise prices. Workers find that their wages, even if higher in dollars, will buy less. Businessmen find that their costs have risen so that the extra sales are not as profitable as they anticipated unless they can raise their prices even faster. The bad effects start to emerge: higher prices, less buoyant demand, inflation combined with stagnation. As with the alcoholic, the temptation is to increase the quantity of money still faster, which produces the roller coaster we have been on. In both cases, it takes a larger and larger amount of alcohol or money to give the alcoholic or the economy the same kick. Let me highlight all that. It's interesting. Get what he's saying? The parallel between alcoholism and inflation carries over to the cure. The cure for alcoholism is easy to state: stop drinking. It is hard to take because this time the bad effects come first, the good effects come later. We're going to see that pretty soon. It cost me $50 for 20 chicken wings and some fries and 2 drinks. Fucking an abundance of sugary drinks in a fucking cup. Cup, they make millions of cups, paper or cardboard cups, and fucking 20 wings and some french fries, $50 something. The cure for alcoholism is simple to state: stop drinking. It is hard to take because this time the bad effects come first, the good effects come later. The alcoholic who goes on the wagon suffers severe withdrawal pains before he emerges in the happy land of no longer having an almost irresistible desire for another drink. So also with inflation, the initial side effects of a slower rate of monetary growth are painful. Lower economic growth, temporarily high unemployment, without for a time much reduction of inflation. The benefits appear only after 1 or 2 years or so in the form of lower inflation, a healthier economy, the potential for rapid non-inflationary growth. There have been bureaucrats and greedy motherfuckers forever. Forever, dude. This guy wrote this shit in like the early 80s, the late 70s. Painful side effects are one reason why it is difficult for an alcoholic or an inflationary nation to end its addiction. But there was another reason which, at least in the earlier stage of the disease, may be even more important. Let's call this shit an addiction. Greedy people. The lack of a real desire to end the addiction. He said this is more important. The lack of a real desire to end the addiction. But there was another reason which, at least in the earlier stage of the disease, may be even more important. The lack of a real desire to end the addiction. Wow. He's using addiction as an analogy for inflation. It's human vice, right? It's just human behavior. The drinker enjoys his liquor. He finds it hard to accept that he really is an alcoholic. He's not sure he wants to take the cure. The inflationary nation is in the same position. It is tempting to believe that inflation is a temporary and mild matter produced by unusual and extraneous circumstances and that it will go away of its own accord, something that never happens. It is tempting to believe that inflation is a temporary and mild matter produced by unusual and extraneous circumstances, and that it will go away of its own accord, something that never happens. Moreover, many of us enjoy inflation. We would naturally like to see the prices of the things we buy go down or at least stop going up, but we are more than happy to see the prices of the things we sell go up. Whether goods we produce, our labor, services, or houses or other items we own. Farmers complain about inflation, but congregate in Washington to lobby for higher prices for their products. Most of the rest of us do the same in one way or another. One reason inflation is so destructive is because some people benefit greatly while other people suffer. This is a capitalist economist, guys. You understand? One reason inflation is so destructive is because some people, I gotta put my MAGA hat on. Some people benefit greatly while other people suffer. Society is divided up into winners and losers. The winners regard the good things that happen to them as the natural result of their own foresight, prudence, and initiative. They regard the bad things, the rise in prices of the things they buy, as produced by forces outside their control. Retard. Almost everyone will say that he is against inflation. What he generally means is that he is against the bad things that have happened to him. To take a specific example, almost everybody or almost every person who has owned a home during the past 2 decades has benefited from inflation. The value of his home has risen sharply. If he had a mortgage, the interest rate was generally below the rate of inflation. As a result, the payments called interest, as well as those called principal, have in effect been paying off the mortgage. To take a simple example, suppose both the interest rate and inflation rate were 7% in 1 year. If you had a $10,000 mortgage on which you paid only interest, a year later the mortgage would correspond to the same buying power as $9,300 would have a year earlier. In real terms, you would owe $700 less, just the amount you paid as interest. In real terms, you would have paid nothing for the use of the $10,000. Indeed, because the interest is deductible in computing your income tax, you would actually benefit. You would have been paid for borrowing. The way this effect becomes apparent to the homeowner is that his equity in the house goes up rapidly. The counterpart is a loss to the small savers who provided the funds that enabled savings and loans associations, mutual savings banks, and other institutions to finance mortgage loans. I'm lending to you on a loss. The small savers had no good alternative because government limits narrowly the maximum interest rate that such institutions can pay to the depositors, supposedly to protect the depositors. Just as high government spending is one reason for excessive monetary growth, so lower government spending is one element that can contribute to reducing monetary growth. Here too, we tend to be schizophrenic. We would all like to see government spending to go down, provided it is not spending that benefits us. We would all like to see deficits reduced, provided it is through taxes imposed on others. As inflation accelerates, however, sooner or later it does so much damage to the fabric of society, creates so much injustice and suffering, that a real public will develops to do something about inflation. The level of inflation at which that occurs depends critically on the country in question and its history. In Germany, it came at a low level of inflation because of Germany's terrible experiences after World War I and II. It came at a much higher level of inflation in the United Kingdom and Japan. It has not yet come in the United States. It's funny. I'm gonna post this on Instagram. See what the hell's going on. Anyway, y'all. Peace.